Nintendo's Amiibo figures look great as they are, but customizing is a way of making them even more special. I'm TJ, and it's my mission to make the map that removes the mystery from Amiibo to help you chart the course to conquer your favorite custom challenges and achieve the unique and personalized Amiibo you always wanted. Let me make the mistakes so you don't have to.
Adventure time! I'm bored already.
That's me, TJ, and Dark TJ. They'll be popping up from time to time to offer some tips, tricks, and helpful hints.
Don't listen to anything this guy has to say. He has no idea what he's doing.
Or not so helpful. It's dangerous to go alone, so come with us and we'll conquer this custom together. Welcome to Custom Conquest. Wow, everybody, here we are for the 7th and final installment of our Custom Koopaling series. This time we're going to feature the eldest of the Koopa kids, Ludwig Von Koopa. I don't know what's going on here anymore, but Ludwig is a classic Koopa with a classic look. Nailing that Beethoven-inspired hair was really key, and as I alluded to, well...
He was kicking and screaming on the table like a little baby.
As he alluded to, in the first episode, there was maybe 1 or 2 temper tantrums that occurred, so we'll make sure to arm you with the tools that you need to be able to do this without breaking into a spontaneous fit. Let's push that start button.
Truth be told, there are quite a few tricky things here about Ludwig. He was every bit as tough as the rest of the Koopalings. That puts him at a 9 at the Custom Conquest scale, yet I can't help but feel I managed to make it a lot more difficult than it needed to be. Let's quickly cover the components, including the figures, pieces, and parts. We began with the Bowser Jr. Amiibo, like all our Koopa kids. Little baby BJ wasn't too bad of a match for Ludwig. Next up, I got that Smash Series Bowser Amiibo, but all I really did was pilfer a few pointy pieces, so no need to snag an extra figure just for that. We made good use of the thumbtacks and the paper clips so that we could pose this guy into the position we wanted him to be in.
Hey, anybody want to guess what's next?
Yes, we did use that plastic spork again for teeth and tummy detail. And finally, I used the custom vinyl stickers. Ludwig does have these small, beady, highly detailed little eyes, and this route enabled me to maintain absolute precision. Over on the equipment side of things, let's quickly recap the tools and supplies. We'll round up the usual suspects, including the round-nosed pliers. And it might not be a bad idea to add some fine-tip tweezers to that. We will of course need some sculpting putty to achieve Ludwig's voluminous classic hairstyle. Gotta have super glue.
I can't even believe how many times you've glued your fingers together on this one.
Make sure you have your paint and brushes, since just like the rest of the Koopa clan, he is a complete repaint. And finally, you're gonna need a cutter and some sandpaper. For me, that meant an X-acto knife, and where the sandpaper's concerned, I like a good medium grade. Let's take a look at Ludwig and consider our approach. The most distinguishing and defining feature about Ludwig is that wild blue hairstyle. It dominates the top of his head, and there's nothing I can think of that's really quite like it, so the only way to get that is to sculpt it. And sculpt it!
And sculpt it!
Over and over again. The hair really is the key, so that's where we're going to spend most of our time on this guy. The upper area of Bowser Jr.'s head should be just fine. Ludwig does have thinner brows and his eyes are a little bit different, so we'll blank Bowser Jr. and build on Ludwig. One thing Ludwig and Bowser Jr. have in common is they both only have one exposed tooth, but Ludwig has a cleft lip and his tooth is in the center. So we'll have to spend a little bit of time reshaping there. With respect to the arms, both of Bowser Jr.'s are bent at roughly a 90-degree angle, and Ludwig's are pretty extended. We can make it easy and just sculpt ourselves some new arms, but I think I'm going to go that extra mile and unnecessarily add a heightened level of difficulty and time commitment by trying to preserve some of the plastic from Bowser Jr. For the hands, if we change the angle of Bowser Jr.'s left hand, that'll work great. But since Bowser Jr.'s right hand is clenched into a fist and Ludwig's is open, we will have to come up with another solution there. Since Ludwig stands pretty upright and his entire abdominal column is exposed, that's something we're going to have to construct. And then just like every other Koopaling on this project, we'll remodel the eyes for the clown car, patch up the hole from Bowser Jr.'s stand so that we can adjust it to the angle of Ludwig's Smash Trophy, and hit the rim and propeller with a little bit of blue. Let's conquer this Koopaling custom! 6 Koopa kids down, now let's show a little love for Ludwig. We need to start by breaking down Bowser Jr., so I'm going to throw him into some boiling water to soften him up, and that'll make him pretty easy to pull apart. Let's set the clown car and most of the other pieces aside and start with the head. I'm going to pull off the ponytail and trim off the horns, and I'm also going to trim off the eyes and eyebrows. Ludwig has these really thin eyebrows. I could have included them as part of the sticker, or I could paint them on or sculpt them, but I really want them to be raised, so I'm actually going to use Bowser Jr.'s eyebrow. I'm just going to trim them down to match the shape of Ludwig's. But because they need to be layered on top of the stickers, that has to happen much later in the process, so just make sure you don't lose them. Since I won't need to build up on his head, I'm going to sand it to make sure I have a nice smooth surface area. We can trim off Bowser Jr.'s little snaggletooth there, and then go about carving out Ludwig's cleft lip. We've done this once before with Larry, except in the case of Ludwig's Smash Brothers trophy, his mouth is closed, so that's one less thing we have to deal with. I'm going to start by just carving out a little triangle here. I'll work really slow and carefully to keep it as symmetrical as possible, And once I got the shape I like, time for some sandpaper to smooth it out. Believe it or not, that's all we really have to do to prep Ludwig's head for the hair. But since that was a bit of an ordeal, why don't we set the head aside for now and address the body. Since I'll want to center Ludwig in the car, I will have to remove Bowser Jr.'s base, but we can attend to that later. I'm going to show the arms two different ways. The way we did do it,
And the way we should have done it.
I snipped Bowser Jr.'s arms off his body, and I removed the hands. I scored both arms at the elbow crease, and pried them open. Since Amiibo plastic is really stubborn, and no matter what you do to it, it has this really strong propensity to return to its original shape, I stuck a tiny piece of paper clip in there to hold it into the position that I wanted. Then I used my thumbtack to poke a hole into the body and another at the top of each arm, and connected them with a paper clip. I reattached Bowser Jr.'s left hand at the desired angle, and for Ludwig's right hand, as you've seen me do several times before, I repurposed an extra Bowser Jr. left hand by removing the thumb and gluing it to the other side. If you don't have any extra pieces on hand, haha, get it on hand? All we gotta do is pound out a little putty pancake, add a few incisions, and finesse it into shape.
While we're on the topic of putty,
Yeah, so that would have been a much easier way to achieve Ludwig's arms. Rather than trying to play with the plastic, we could just roll out a couple logs and add them right over our paperclip. Now would also be a pretty good time to fill in the rest of the gaps on the body. We can add the shell and create the abdomen. For this, just like with a number of the other Koopalings, I cut out the center of a plastic spork, scored it with my X-acto knife, and then folded it to create the appearance of segmentation. And then as a little extra detail for separation, I used a tiny pair of scissors to cut out some tiny triangles at the end of each fold. I also had to cut a little bit of a divot out of the top to accommodate the application of Ludwig's head. Super glue that sucker to the body after the putty is set, and we're good to go. For the spikes on Ludwig's bracers, I just nicked him right off Bowser's cuff since I had him left over from Morton and Roy. But if you're gonna sculpt them, just make yourself a tiny little ball and stick them right on there. Now here's where things started to get a little hairy. If there's one critical make or break component to Ludwig, it's definitely his hair. That classical wavy Beethoven mane is his signature feature. And it was probably the single most frustrating thing that I worked on for any of the Koopalings on this entire project. And I can't even tell you exactly why, because it's not really that hard. But for some reason, it gave me a tremendous amount of trouble, and as DT alluded to in the first installment of the Koopaling series, I did have a couple man-child meltdowns that I'm not proud to say resulted in me chucking the clay across the room more than once. Let's start by just taking a quick second to inspect the style. Depending on the angle you're looking at it, from the front you can definitely see these two wavy wings. But if you look at it from the back or the top, you can see that there's actually 10 points. They're divided by a center part with 5 on each side, 2 in the front and then 2 on the top center, and another on the bottom. For my first attempt, I thought I would just tackle it in 2 sides. I started with Sculpey so I can take my time, and just started working out some points. It actually started looking pretty good, so I repeated the process with the second side, and while it took me a lot longer because I needed to make it look identical to the first, eventually I got it to the point where it looked pretty good. Then when I attempted to attach it to the head, I realized that I had horribly miscalculated the scale, and the hairstyle that I had made was much too big. Any attempt to scale it down was futile, so I knew I would just have to start over again. Only to avoid repeating this process, I decided I would build it right onto the head. What really started getting under my skin was, every time I added the second half, there wasn't really any way of handling it without wrecking something that I had already sculpted. So I played the game of 2 Sculpey steps forward, 1 Sculpey step back, for what had to have been 4 or 5 times. More than one of which resulted in a violent smashing,
or just got straight up chucked across the room.
Then finally, after calming down and many attempts, eventually I did sculpt that majestic blue mane out of some Sculpey and put it in the oven at 275 degrees for 15 minutes, head and all. And I was relieved to finally be able to close the chapter of the most frustrating aspect of Koopaling construction. Until I stepped away from Ludwig for a bit while I was working on some of the other Koopalings, and when I came back, the hair, I don't know, it was bugging me and I felt like I could do a lot better. So now for the winning recipe. Now I'm going to detail the approach I used that led me to the finished product, which I'm relieved to say I'm very happy with. First of all, I used Milliput, and instead of trying to sculpt it together, I actually made a series of comparably sized teardrops. I added them to the head one at a time and folded them in with my fingers and toothpicks and smoothed them out with water. I was very patient. And more importantly, I was really persistent. It took me a fair amount of time, and I've dedicated a fair amount of the episode to recounting my missteps. And the reason for that is I really want you to feel like it doesn't have to be perfect the first time. Art is a process of discovery. I made mistakes. You're probably gonna make mistakes too. And yes, you will learn from them. Yes, you will grow. Yes, you will get better. But whatever you do, don't quit. Since Milliput's an air dry epoxy, there was no need to bake it, and now we can prep it for painting. I started by priming with a gray, followed up by some yellow primer. Now time for the brushwork. But first,
Thin your paints!
For those of you who are wondering what to thin your paints with, since all the ones that I used are acrylic, all we need to do is add a little bit of water so we have a nice smooth application totally free of brush strokes. I painted the top of Ludwig's head green. I painted his muzzle area and his abdomen a wheat color. I combed Ludwig's hair with a little bit of blue paint. I hit the shell spikes with a flesh tone. For the base of Ludwig's shell, I used the same blue that I used for his hair. I traced the rim of his shell with a white. I hit his bracers with a black, and I dabbed the spikes with a little bit of silver. I trimmed out my vinyl stickers and stuck them right to Ludwig's face, and now we can address the eyebrows. I painted them first because I figured it wouldn't didn't need to be as neat, but because they're so small, it was actually kind of a mess, so maybe that would have been easier if I just waited till after they were glued on. And speaking of small, they were also really hard to grip, so I used a tweezer, and even then it was still a little bit of a struggle. To try to keep things clean, I recommend using as little glue as possible. For that one tooth in the front, I snipped one of the pointy tips off of my plastic spork. I cut the end of it to match the contours of Ludwig's cleft lip, and I glued it right on. For Ludwig's clown car, there's nothing I can show you here that you haven't already seen in the previous 6 episodes. If you want a detailed breakdown of the process that I used for the clown cars, I'll refer you back to the first episode of the miniseries featuring Larry, where I go over it at length. To finish off the brains of this Koopa Kid outfit, we'll attach Ludwig to the clown car, and with that, Ludwig Von Koopa joins the battle.
This is the last one of these, can you believe it? Let's put Ludwig in the box. Now we got the whole series of custom Koopalings and custom boxes all good to go. If you want to add them to your collection, you can download them from a link in the description below. And as with a bunch of the other Koopalings, if you want the custom vinyl sticker templates for the eyes, you can also find those down in the description. And I want to thank you for sending in your amazing artwork. I really appreciated seeing them. It is a lot of fun for me, and I think all of our players at home like seeing them too. So thanks to everybody who contributed. Let's take a look at this. If you want your artwork featured here on Custom Conquest, just send me a pic at Custom Conquest on Twitter using the hashtag MyCCAmiibo, or you can email them to customconquest@gmail.com. This has been a long road, everybody, like a long road, but we got it all done. You stuck by me, I really appreciate it. And here's my own little way of saying thanks.
Let's do a giveaway!
I made a 7-card series of the entire Koopaling clan, and they do function as Amiibo. So if this is something that you think you'd be interested in having to enter to win, all you gotta do is head to my Twitter account at Custom Conquest, and you'll find this video pinned up at the top. Hit that little heart and retweet it. That's it. The winner will be announced right here in our next episode of Custom Conquest, which will be our super ultimate custom clown car spectacular. I don't really know what that means, but you'll see next time. Good luck, everybody. Wow, that was an epic journey. I can't believe we're at the end of it. The entire Koopaling clan has joined the battle. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for playing.
Dark side out. I don't know about you, but I'm so sick of these stinking Koopalings. Next episode better be something awesome, or I'm not even coming out of my trailer.